Big voter turnout in the U.S. state of South Carolina has given Barack Obama fresh impetus in his bid for the White House.
Obama seized an overwhelming victory in the Democratic primary, where black voters gave him a much-needed campaign boost over Hillary Clinton. Let's go live to Al Jazeera's Kimberly Halkett in South Carolina.
Well, it was certainly a very big win for Barack Obama. He has been looking for this after back-to-back losses, both in the U.S. state of New Hampshire as well as the western state of Nevada. The Clinton campaign really felt that they needed this victory in South Carolina if he was to continue some momentum moving on into what is called Super Tuesday. That's when 22 U.S. states will be holding primaries or caucuses around the United States, where Hillary Clinton right now is favored nationally, 10% above Barack Obama. The campaign, Barack Obama's campaign, knew that, and so they really were concentrating on South Carolina to kind of find the resurge in momentum that is needed, not only for fundraising dollars, but also in terms of what he needs to do in order to try and reach beyond the base, so to speak. And certainly that is what happened after South Carolina handed a resounding win to Barack Obama.
After back-to-back losses, Barack Obama's survival hung on a big win in South Carolina. Obama did not disappoint, and he claimed this crushing victory makes him the clear Democratic frontrunner.
We have the most votes, the most delegates, and the most diverse coalition of Americans that we've seen in a long, long time.
In a state where half the Democratic voters were black, he won 4 out of 5 of those votes, as well as a majority of young white voters. And Obama captured a large share of Hillary Clinton's strongest following, women.
You know, I want to congratulate Senator Obama tonight, and I want to also thank the people of South Carolina for welcoming us into their homes and their communities. And I want to tell you how excited I am that now the eyes of the country turn to Tennessee and the other states that'll be voting on February 5th.
In the final days of the race, former U.S. President Bill Clinton's aggressive campaigning for his wife had become a factor in the outcome. Exit polls indicated his disparaging comments on Obama's stand on Iraq and claims that Obama exploited his race rubbed a good number of voters the wrong way, with many calling the attacks unfair. But with some voters, those attacks raised doubts about Obama's electability against a Republican.
And I wondered when you got to the general election, would he make it all the way through?
Because he's black.
Simply because he's black.
Obama called his win a rebuff to the Clinton tactics.
The choice in this election is not between regions or religions or genders. It's not about rich versus poor, young versus old. And it is not about black versus white.
But Bill Clinton denied the rough and tumble of this campaign threatened to fracture Democratic ranks.
Our side wants to change the economic and foreign policy direction of this country. And in order to do it, we'll have a vigorous primary fight, and we've got to put our party back together. And I'm looking forward to that.
Hillary Clinton now hopes to recover momentum as she campaigns across the United States, where polls indicate she maintains a wide lead. And if John Edwards, the third-place finisher in South Carolina, remains in the race to split the vote, Clinton could benefit on February 5th when more than half the remaining states hold their primaries.
Kimberly, how will the Clinton camp be feeling ahead of Super Tuesday? Do you think they'll be disappointed by this resounding victory by Obama in South Carolina?
There certainly is tremendous disappointment. You know, it was interesting all this week. South Carolina is known for some sort of dirty campaign style tactics, and that was certainly not the exception this week. We saw President Bill Clinton, the former president, coming out campaigning on behalf of his wife, really using some nasty tactics that are really surprising in terms of behavior from a former president. But that really says something about Barack Obama's candidacy, the fact that it takes both Hillary Clinton and a former former president, the husband of Hillary Clinton, former President Bill Clinton, to try and defeat or try to get ahead of Barack Obama, really says something about how they see him as a formidable force, and that certainly was the case. And I think we're going to be seeing that going to Super Tuesday. This desperation is perhaps too strong of a word, but certainly recognizing that they're up against a pretty tough challenging. Despite the lead, things can change very quickly in this campaign.
Okay, Kimberly, thank you. We'll leave it there. Kimberly Halkett joining us live in South Carolina.
Let's get a little analysis on all of this from Kathleen Kendall, who's an expert on U.S. presidential elections, and she's from Maryland University. Kathleen, thanks for being with us. You heard
Yes.
Kimberly's comments there, but in general terms, South Carolina is, I believe, the second most populous black state in the United States. Is there really that much of a surprise that Obama won it so convincingly? And does it change the dynamics of what has really been a very close race?
You know, it's a fairly small state. It's one of the 4 states that have their primaries on a day all by themselves, and so they get tremendous amount of attention. You're right that the polls predicted that he would win because the majority of Democratic voters in the primary are African American, so that really wasn't very surprising. But Obama has not campaigned as an African American. He has not emphasized that. He's emphasized his desire to unite the country. And so he really had to, he changed a bit in South Carolina. The African Americans greeted him warmly. They were so happy that an African American had done well in a virtually all-white state like Iowa, and they began to see that an African American might possibly be able to win.
So
people don't want to throw away their vote.
Yeah, as you say, he hasn't
People
really
don't want
been...
to throw away their vote.
As you say, he hasn't really been playing up the race side of things, but it does appear as if the media, at least, thinks that the race issue is becoming more and more important and more divisive. And most of the blame for that, has to be said, is going towards the Clintons. Is that fair? And do you think it's going to get worse?
You know, I think that because it's a political campaign with a series of individual races, the way our primary system works, the candidates have got to point out the differences between each other. And some people find that disagreeable and unpleasant because it means saying the other person is weak and I'm strong, and the other person, you know, has failed and I've succeeded. And both sides become annoyed by this and angry. President Clinton was, you know, really, I think he had 14 appearances in South Carolina, and he went after Obama and very, very strongly, and in ways that some people thought were too strong and too divisive. And the voters who were interviewed, the ones that we heard earlier on this station, did not emphasize that. They emphasized the fact that they voted mainly because they were worried about the economy rather than that issue. But this is the kind of thing that we'll find out more as things shake down in the next week or two.
It also seems to be that one of the issues that the media is beginning to take up as one of their favorite themes is how divisive this particular contest is for the Democratic nomination. But from your knowledge of previous election campaigns, is this one, albeit a very, very close one and a very, very hardly fought one, is this race particularly divisive in historical context? Is it worse than previous races?
No, it's not. Because, as I say, they really need to differentiate, and particularly when it narrows down like this, when you've got 2 main candidates, and you also have John Edwards continuing, even though he hasn't won any primaries, when the 2 of them are determined to emerge successful, and when it narrows down like that, you're going to have some really hard-fought battles. We have, after these 4 early events, we now have on the next one big one is on February 5th, as you've mentioned, and there's a long time between now and then. It may not seem long, it's only 10 days, but in the life of the primary, that's a long time, and the media will probably focus on South Carolina through most of that time, because that's the most recent race.
10 days is indeed a long time in politics. Kathleen Kendall from Maryland University, thank you.